Hello, and thank you for joining us. CBS News has obtained the resignation letter of Manhattan's top federal prosecutor who stepped down from her role Wednesday following a directive from the Justice Department to drop the criminal case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. In it, Danielle Sassoon said, quote, "I remain baffled by the rushed and superficial process by which this decision was reached," end quote. She also urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to reconsider the memo that called for the dismissal of Adams' case. On Thursday afternoon, President Trump told reporters in the Oval Office he had not asked for the case against Adams to be dropped. CBS News Justice Department correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins me now. Scott, 3 top federal prosecutors in New York City have resigned. Their resignations, of course, come after the Justice Department recommended these charges against Adams being dropped. What's going on here, and what more can you tell us about Sassoon's resignation letter?
A dramatic, tumultuous moment inside the Department of Justice, just in the early stages of the new leadership of the U.S. Justice Department. Not only did the top prosecutor in Manhattan resign in protest over this controversial decision to drop the case against Eric Adams, who's pleaded not guilty to corruption charges, she reveals that they were going to bring new charges against Adams, alleging that he had tried to mislead or lie to the FBI during the investigation. And she alleges there was some quid pro quo that was attempted by Adams' defense attorneys, in which they promised to her and her bosses that if they dropped the case, Mayor Adams would help more with Trump's immigration enforcement priorities. She flags that, and it's worth noting in particular, Lindsay, because as part of his order that this case be dropped, Trump's allies at the Department of Justice said they got to drop the case because Eric Adams can help with Trump's immigration enforcement priorities. But there's more. A second and third high-ranking Department of Justice official resigned today also after this case was shifted onto their plates. And that may not be the end of it, Lindsay. There could be more resignations to come. And as the night began here in Washington and in Manhattan, the case still stood against Eric Adams.
Are we hearing anything yet from Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, the Justice Department, or Adams' lawyers?
Adams' lawyers unequivocally, in a statement to CBS News, deny the allegations of a quid pro quo being offered to this federal prosecutor. It's worth noting the background of this federal prosecutor, Danielle Sassoon, who took over just a few weeks ago during some of the changeover in federal prosecutor offices nationwide. It was a temp job for her. She once clerked for Antonin Scalia, arguably the most conservative justice of our lifetimes. She has, in her resignation letter, cited her background and her credentials when she made the argument that this was a rushed process and it was not merited, that Eric Adams' case should not be dropped. But, Lindsay, that's not the first word of protest we've heard about this. The Department of Justice's rationale for dropping this case wasn't that the facts changed or that there was a lack of confidence in his guilt. It was that it's a distraction against the mayor at a time when there's a primary coming up for New York City's mayor in the summer, and in which he could be there helping Donald Trump's priorities on immigration. That's the quid pro quo that was alleged today by Danielle Sassoon.
Every day is a busy day in Washington, but particularly today you're following multiple beats, and we have reporting of mass layoffs at the Department of Education. What do you know about that and any other agencies that could be impacted?
It's going to be more agencies in which this happens, but in the Department of Education, there's efforts to terminate employees who are newer to the job. The phrase they use here in Washington, Lindsay, is probationary employees, somebody who's had less experience and has less of a civil service protection, easier to move out. It begins at the Department of Education, an agency Trump wants to get rid of altogether. It's going to move to other agencies. And to tie this all together, Lindsay, there's a concern inside the FBI that their probationary employees will be cut as well. As many as 1,000 could be among those trimmed as part of a system-wide effort to cut newer employees to make it simpler for Trump to get rid of large numbers of federal employees. It starts at the Department of Education, but it does not end there, Lindsay.
Of course, Wednesday night, we saw a judge say that President Trump's fork-in-the-road directive, those deferred buyouts, could continue, and the administration shortly after that saying doors closed, no more buyouts would be offered. Scott MacFarlane, thank you. Later this hour, we're going to talk to a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General about Thursday's resignation of Manhattan's top federal prosecutor.